watching Channel 4. Now, Love Talk discusses non-monogamous relationships with Paul and Elaine, and Richard too.
We saw each other in a pub, and I saw him, and our eyes met. And I was saying to a friend, "Who's that?" And he was with another girl, and they said, "Oh no, he's with her." And it seems, I didn't know this, but at the same time he was saying, "Who's that?"
I thought she was one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. Cliche. That's true. Across a crowded room as well. Everything there.
I'd been living with this man who was very, very jealous, and constrictively so. So when I met Paul, I sort of almost immediately said, "I'm not going through that again. Don't want any jealousies, don't want any pressures, so don't need to try and change me." And he said, "Don't want to change you. Quite happy with the way you are."
We didn't want to feel that we belonged to the other person as a piece of property. We're both free within the relationship to take other partners as and when we need to.
We've been living together for nearly 10 years in January. We basically got in what is described as an open relationship, which is quite a vague term that lots of people use, but I don't think many people can really understand what it is. It's usually sort of known that we have an open relationship, or it's mentioned, and you just start talking to the person. And I always find that I have to be able to talk to them. It's not just a case of a one-night stand and that's it. There has to be more of an interest in the personality. I have to get on with them. And so we usually find that we talk, we might go out for drinks together, and it just develops slowly. And then after a while, if they get a bit more relaxed, we might end up sort of sleeping together. Well, as soon as we, one of us gets back into the house, we immediately hug each other. And
hug therapy, very important.
And so it's not that sort of standoffish of, "Well, hello, I'm back, dear."
There was one time when I'd been staying out and came back early in the morning, and Elaine had brought someone else back as well. And this was really quite a traumatic experience for the young lad, unfortunately. I think he thought I was going to beat him up. Well, I'm sure he did. He ran, hid in the toilet. Poor lad. Elaine had to coax him out. I had to promise to go away. We tried being quite specific about exactly what had been going on during the night or the evening or whatever it was. It wasn't natural for us to try and find out whether handcuffs were used or biting of toes.
I usually find that when we're having affairs, it tends to sort of liven the whole sexual relationship up. It adds a bit of sparkle.
It can be very much more exciting between us because why can it be? I don't know why it happens actually. I'm not exactly sure.
If you eat porridge every day, it gets boring. So if you have something different, it just sort of adds a bit of spark. You might find something that you've not done before that you enjoy, and so you can bring that back and say, "Shall we try this one?"
Well, everybody's tempted, I think, from time to time. And really, if you repress that urge, you're storing up resentment against your regular partner, which is the last thing you want to do.
We've been given books with long passages about what it's like to feel jealousy and this raging internal battles, and I just never felt that.
The first really serious girlfriend I had started to confess that she'd been seeing a couple of ex-boyfriends behind me back, and she was really deeply distressed, crying and almost literally on her knees asking me for forgiveness for this, which I thought, I knew how I was supposed to react. I was supposed to get angry and maybe throw one or two things around and then forgive her, and everything will be hunky-dory. But I looked at this this person who I was supposed to be in love with and realised that I was the source of this pain that she was feeling. And thought, well, this need not be so.
The time before last, I had an affair, and it got very, very serious. And I got to the stage where I was thinking, could I possibly live with this man? Could I leave Paul and set up with this man? And I thought very seriously and very long about it.
I was struggling with myself because I realised that this was a direct result of the policy we had about seeing other people. One of the things that I could have done would be to say, this isn't all right, you've got to stop it now. I don't want this to carry on anymore, you're staying with me. But I didn't do that because that would have really thrown out the window everything that we'd stood for over the last few years. I was faced for the first time with the real possibility of it all ending, and it wasn't very pleasant, I must say.
In the end, I decided that if I did leave Paul and move in with this man, I wouldn't be able to continue in the way I was. I would have to change myself, and he realised that as well.
She came in and said, well, I've decided I'm going to stay with you. So I said, very sensible, very sensible.
I think it sort of strengthened it, because I knew that I'd thought very seriously about leaving him, and in the end decided that I didn't want to. I did want to stay with Paul, and he was the right person for me. At the moment I'm having an affair with Richard. Who's a friend of a friend. I've known him about 6 months now. We've been having an affair for about two months.
We had a drink, and then she started talking about this idea of an open relationship, at which I sort of listened to in a sense of disbelief. You know, I thought, well, as a man, you know, I never particularly like to share my woman, and I don't think I ever have, you know. So it was, I couldn't really believe it.
He was a bit apprehensive when it first started. I mean, when I was getting to know him, I did talk about having an open relationship, and he, I think he sort of accepted the words without accepting the truth behind it.
She did mention that she'd had a few affairs before, and one of the sort of the essence of the thing apparently was that they really trust each other. So I don't know if that means that they always end up back together again or what. Ideally, I would like to have Elaine to myself. It's very pleasant and enjoyable, but it's not really a full relationship as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, if he does fall in love and want anything more, I think I'd probably just have to say, well, that's it. You know, I can't give anything else. I can't give any more than that. And I think we just have to sort of stop seeing each other. I mean, at the moment, it's very near the start, so it could go on for 6 months. I don't know.
If Elaine's motive was that she was like going to use me up, and then eventually she'll go back to Paul when she's had enough, and she wants to get back to her sort of routine domesticity or whatever it is, then I'd say that it was extremely selfish. But at the moment, it does not appear like that at all.
It can be viewed as selfish, and I often sort of worry about that. But I don't go around pretending to be single, and Paul doesn't go around pretending to be single. We don't try and fool anybody into expecting anything else from the relationship. You know, that they know that from the very start that we're not going to split up.
You try and take care to avoid people who are going to get hung up on you. Once or twice in the past, it's got quite serious for the other person that I've been going out with, and at that point I've immediately had to break it off, which has caused a bit of upset at the time, but can't be helped. Can't be helped.
We love each other very deeply. We're very, very affectionate, and even now, for nearly 10 years, if we're walking down the street, we hold hands, we have our arms around each other, we kiss. I know that Paul will always come back to me. I know fairly surely that he wouldn't go off with somebody else, and if he did, we'd discuss it and I'd know why. It wouldn't be a case of finding a note on the table saying, I've gone.
We can't know how long this is going to carry on being as good as it is. Obviously there's always the possibility, we have to live with this possibility that one of us is going to meet someone else they'd rather be with and spend the rest of their life with. But other than that, we can't really see any reason to break up. I see it, certainly I see it going on forever. I think you always do, don't you?
Paul, that film was made 2 months ago. What's happened since?
Well, since then, a few weeks after that was made, really right out of the blue for me, Elaine came to me and said that she would rather live with Richard. I had to try and make sure that she knew what she was doing and that this was definitely what she wanted to do.
And how did you affirm that?
Well, I really just asked her whether she knew what she was doing, and you know, it's such a big step. Obviously, we've been together for 10 years. She was able to convince me that she felt it was the right thing to do, so I said okay.
So that's why she's not here with us in the studio.
That's right.
It seemed so good from that film, though. It seemed so whole.
It was. It really isn't something that's a problem for me right now, because if what she told me was true, and I've got no reason to doubt that, she's with someone that she would rather be with. She's more of herself. She's happier with this other person than she was with me. If I was to say, you can't go, you can't do that, then that really would be foolish. I wouldn't be doing either of us any good at all.
Do you feel that the open relationship, or the relationship itself, failed then?
No, not at all. No, this was not a relationship that failed. It came to its logical end, maybe. It finished when it needed to, but it wasn't a failure on either of our parts. It was really just that Elaine felt she needed to be with Richard rather than me, and that was fine.
So, will this experience have diminished your faith in open relationships yourself?
No, not at all, not at all. I'm not really committed one way or the other. I don't need to have an open relationship. My next relationship could easily be a monogamous one if that's what was wanted. It hasn't taken anything away from the idea of an open relationship for me. I would quite happily do that again if I felt the other person was going to be able to cope with it.
Francis, you've always been in monogamous relationships, although you're not in a relationship at the moment. Now, what was your reaction to the film?
I have to say I felt slightly sorry for Paul, really. Especially that shot in the barroom when Elaine went over and kissed Richard. To me, I felt there was a great sense of loss there, and certainly if I were in his position, I don't think I could have coped with that properly. I think the predominant feeling I got throughout it was, I think it struck me when Elaine said, I don't feel jealous if Paul was to go with somebody else. But I think if there's no great love there anyway, there never will be a sense of jealousy. And I would question really whether there was a relationship of meaning there. I mean, the question I would like to put to Paul is, I mean, do you miss Elaine?
Yes, I miss her, but we're still very good friends. I meet her quite a lot for lunch, and it's not something that's finished abruptly. And I suppose I'm still in love with her. Yeah, I suppose I always will be, really.
Coming in from, like, completely opposite point of view, I'm the woman who went out with a bloke who had another woman. Right. Yeah, so it's like, that's a successful relationship for 10 years. I don't see it as a failure. I mean, it lasted for 10 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If we're going to concentrate on the last sort of couple of months of it and say non-monogamy didn't work, but it did, it worked for 10 years. I mean, that's more than a lot of married couples stay together.
So, Caroline, you say that you were in an open relationship that was instigated by your boyfriend, presumably?
Yeah.
Now, how did you feel about that from a woman's perspective?
Well, it was the first time it ever happened to me. I mean, I'd never been in an open relationship before, but what had been was like an affair before, when I was 18, and I thought, no way, no bloody way am I going to go through this again, you know. And so my partner said to me, I want to have a relationship with this other woman, one particular woman, and I knew this was on the cards. I mean, when you know someone, you can see we all lived in the same town. I mean, the chemistry was happening between them. I just knew, and I'd been having several sleepless nights about it already. And I said, well, listen, I'm going to have to think about this. So we split up for a month to think about it. And
how much did you consider it?
I think I'm a very jealous person. I'm a Scorpio woman, you know, I'm very jealous, and I just thought, oh God, I'm going to have a real problem with this. At the same time, logically, rationally, I thought, I don't own that person. You know, you don't own someone, so why do I have the right actually to say no? But at the same time, if I don't like it, I can get out. I can say, fine, you have your relationship with that woman over there and I'm off.
The only point I would raise is that we continue talking about relationships, and it's a very, I suppose, loosely defined term in the context of the way we're speaking. If you look at the traditional relationship, it's one where a man and a woman come together with the exclusion of all other people. And I suppose it is true to say monogamous relationships do work. Paul has said his relationship worked. I mean, how can you possibly maintain that position when Elaine has left you? And was it ever your ideal that you would live together permanently, or was this sort of a voyage, sort of a disposable relationship or multiple relationship until you find a true woman?
We had a very deep commitment to each other, and I think as far as we were both concerned, it was going to last a long time, if not the rest of our lives.
What would you have done if you had children, or if Elaine fell pregnant by Richard, or would you have carried on the relationship?
Well, there's two questions there. If we'd had children, then obviously the situation's changed, and really you've got to look at bringing kids up in a relationship like that, an environment like that. The thing that children need is stability, and it's very likely that we simply wouldn't feel the need for extra relationships in that situation, and that would be fine. It could then develop into a purely monogamous relationship.
I had an open relationship. Well, my other half did, and it started off as like a sexual fantasy. Get her into bed with another woman, etc. and
Whose
take it from
idea
there.
was this?
This is my idea. It was a fantasy what started in bed one night. Got it out of hand. Started to have an open relationship. And obviously now, I really do regret it.
So was this a long-term relationship? You were in a relationship for how long?
3 years.
And how much of it was open?
A year of it altogether. And it was all down to me. I'd done all the... It was all my idea. I pushed my missus into it.
So what went wrong with it? Why did it fall apart?
Why? Obviously, if you love somebody, you're going to be jealous of them. If you're not jealous, you're not going to love somebody, so the relationship's going to work.
I'd like to take issue with that, but yeah.
Go on,
I know
Paul.
what you're saying, I know what you're saying. Well, the big thing about me and Elaine was, the only reason it was able to work was that we weren't jealous at all. We had no jealousy between us. Obviously, you can't carry on the way we did if you're worrying all the time about what they're doing and are they coming back and is it my fault?
Yeah, I think you stretch your boundaries a lot further than I would have done mine. There's no way I would have played Paul with my fella and the other woman, you know, just spent the whole evening in the pub with them. Yeah, I would have played Paul with them, but to watch them go out through the same door together, I don't think I could have handled that.
Especially
at
holding
all.
hands.
I mean, I really find it extremely difficult. I mean, I'm not saying you're not being honest, but I mean, did you say you really loved Elaine?
course.
Because I think, and I agree with Adrian to a certain extent, if you really, really care about something, you can't share it. I mean, you can't really share. You can't share a woman.
Is that's I mean, like, if I love something, why should I keep it in a cage?
You're not.
Do you know what I mean?
But if it's a
right, yeah.
mutual love, and that's where the relationship comes in. If it's a mutual love, you don't want anything else.
No, this
and if
was-
you have a fulfilling relationship, you don't have to look outside of it.
That's right.
I would say to anybody in an open relationship that obviously it isn't a relationship that's going to work, that's made, a compatible relationship. Because a good relationship is one where you're satisfying an inherent unit together.
Yeah, this was just a
You
different
sacrifice.
kind of relationship. And
But it's not the real relationship for you.
Yes,
I mean, there was no
yes, it was.
sacrifice
Do you
there.
think that you might have been ignorant to what was actually going on deep down?
No, I'd always said, as long as I knew what was going on, that was okay. We considered that we were not unfaithful to each other. If I'd found out that she'd been seeing some other bloke and I hadn't known about it, then the whole basis of trust in a relationship would have been destroyed.
How would you find if you went out with your best friend, for example, or your brother? It wouldn't matter at all.
No, it doesn't matter.
Was there anything that you saw, Francis, in the film that convinced you that this might actually be viable to have a polygamous relationship? There was an unusual degree of honesty that Paul and Elaine shared.
But you see, I don't think it's honesty because it's honesty without consequence. it's when there are no rules and when there's sort of a lack of affection there, and people, when you don't care what somebody else does, well, I mean, there's no penalty to being honest.
Oh,
if, for example, you're in a monogamous relationship, and if you do have an affair, and you know that causes concern and hurt because that person loves you, and if you're honest, well, then obviously that will cause a certain amount of emotion.
Because there's
but when I would think when there's no caring, when there's no caring, and I honestly find it very hard for you two to say that you loved each other an awful lot.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the circumstances bore that out. But I think it's very easy to be honest then. I mean, it's a cheap commodity.
There was no deception at all.
Well, I mean, but you shouldn't be. It's very easy to be honest in that circumstance.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're also mixing up affairs with open relationships. I mean, that's not the same thing.
There's a difference between an affair and an open relationship.
No, I'm saying
me and I keep wanting to say his name. Me and my partner, yeah. I mean, we didn't see each other for a month, and every day that month, I thought about it. I thought, can I do this? I talked to gay men relationships because they're obviously non-monogamy is much more usual in the gay men community, and I was sort of talking to them, and I was saying, how do you negotiate it? And we took care of each other. There's no way I wanted to be hurt, and there's no way I wanted to hurt my partner. Looking back on it, I'm really glad I was in that open relationship, and now I'm considering doing another one.
I tell you something that we haven't talked about yet. Are you, Caroline? Yes.
Don't look at me.
I'm not looking at anyone. When you've got 4 men here, well, 3 actually, I won't include myself. Blimey, that's a good week. I tell you something we haven't talked about yet are the people outside the relationship that you actually end up having relationships with. Now, the rules are all your rules, however you've made them. Aren't they sort of pawns in your game?
Yeah, this can be a problem. Obviously, we have to make sure that they know what's going on right from the start. Because if you don't, you really are just playing with fire. So if they're not happy with it, then it can't go ahead. I've put the question to 1 or 2 women in the past and had my face slapped because they think something really strange is going on.
How do you feel about things now, though? Do you feel betrayed by Elaine?
I did at first, I think, but that was just me feeling sorry for myself. I've been able to come to terms with that now. I know what's been going on in my own mind, as well as with Elaine. I don't feel betrayed at all. We'd always said if you find someone else you'd rather be with, then there won't be any problem, and we've been able to do that.
How do you really, really feel about Richard?
I'd like to have him as a friend more, know him more than I do now. Mainly for Elaine's sake, I think, but I'm also very curious to see why she prefers him to me.
Francis, would you say something like, well, if you'd been in a monogamous relationship, none of this would have happened in the first place?
I think if you're in a successful monogamous relationship, it wouldn't have happened in the first place. I think an awful lot of these open relationships, which really I would consider just not relationships at all, but sort of multi-promiscuous experiences, which avoid any sacrifice, any commitment. I think people who have been in monogamous relationships that have gone wrong and who have lost the element of trust may go into an open relationship if it's a defence mechanism.
I've been split up from my other half since March. Love the cotton socks off her. There's nothing I can do about the relationship now. It's finished, there's children involved, and I've got to try to get on with my own life. There's no way at all that if I settle down with somebody again, I wouldn't even dream of mentioning that word, open relationship. If she mentioned it to me, I'd have to say, I'm very sorry, I don't want to know, you go your way, I'll go my way.
Was it because of the open relationship that you split up, or was the relationship really going down the hill anyway, and this was just the method by which it finished?
It started to go down the hill when I started to expect everything that I wanted. If I expected to come, if I said to right, you know, go out tonight, see if you can pick up a female, or bring such and such back, who you met a couple of weeks ago, she didn't really want to. But then she was doing it to please me, not to please herself, but I thought I was doing it to please her. It was backfiring all the time.
You were both.
Do you really regret this now? Do you feel that you've been foolish?
Totally foolish, yeah. I've still got the old...
Yeah, of course.
And up here, the aches and what have you. I'm kicking myself for it.
Do you think open relationships are very risky these days, considering AIDS?
Yes.
No. I mean, that's safe sex, basically. I mean, either if you're going to have penetration, you've got to use a condom, or you don't have penetration. You do everything else but, you know. There's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah, I would say, why not just have...
I think it has to be said that open relationships are probably not very acceptable to most people. However, monogamy isn't doing so well. What do you think is the answer, Francis?
I think the answer is, I mean, relationships have become consumerised to a certain extent now as well. I mean, I don't think people are taking enough time before they enter into serious relationships. So I don't think the actual concept of a monogamous relationship itself has gone wrong. But I think we have to be educated once again into how to approach it properly.
Personally, I wouldn't go through with it, and I'd never advise anybody else to go through an open relationship, especially where there's children involved.
I take his point about, Francis's point, sorry, about there is a consumerism, there's more access to freedom, we've got more contraception available, we can go in and out of relationships more easily, but that's no reason to say that monogamy is the answer. It never has been the answer. I mean, I just think we need to redefine what relationships are.
There are good points and bad points, obviously, with either. You have to make the choice based on what you feel you need and what you feel you can handle, the two of you, between you. You have to both know what you're getting yourself into. That's the most important thing. And if you make a commitment, then stick to it.
So no regrets?
No regrets.